Colin Liddell is here. Welcome, Colin.
So was Colin shocked that there's Jews so poor that, or he thinks the conspiracy, he thinks it's like Epstein conspiracy?
I'm sure Colin will have a very reasonable take.
Yes, there are Jews that are so poor that they're sleeping in illegal tunnels under a synagogue in Brooklyn.
Well, this is a very minor story that there are some Jews living in New York and that they behave in occasionally eccentric ways.
Well,
I just think it's a real pity that
it's not just Jews; it's Chabad, because like these are the same people that go around the world. So it's like, okay, like these rabbis that like all over the world, like it's these guys, and that's why they're doing it. That's why they're going to such humble, poor conditions, because of the dream that they're being sold.
Well,
that one day.
How long has this stream been running, by the way?
3 hours.
And what have you mainly been talking about?
It's varied. Like the first hour was me just giving a history of Chabad. That guy.
So basically, you've been talking about Jews for 3 hours. Why?
Because that's what I do. Like, I talk about Jews.
Have you got anything else going on in your life that you have to spend 3 hours in just one night talking about Jews, and as if it's important? Why is it important?
Because that's my favorite song. I love Jews. I love talking about Jews. Chabad.
Well, you like it, but I mean, why is
to Steve? I don't know. Like Steve just gives me the opportunity to.
Yeah, I know. But why does he have you on?
I don't even know who the hell Steve is.
To listen to people talking about a really unimportant story.
I kind of like Steve. I don't even know who the hell this guy is. I kind of like him, but he gives me a platform to talk about Jews. I take it.
But honestly, I mean, I just don't see why this is important.
Well, 50 people are tuning in. I don't know.
No, I mean the story. I mean, obviously, people like the Jew story. They find it interesting. It satisfies them in some way. It fills some weird need. But why does it have any greater significance? Because I just find it incredibly trivial and therefore quite boring.
Well, I think it was just that Jews are exposed for something. Secret. Jews have got secrets, basically, and they were exposed.
Well, they're just, so what? So is everybody, there's all sorts of funny groups in New York, and New York's full of pretty weird people. I mean, I went there once, and every day was like a complete zoo and freak show.
Yeah.
And even the homeless crisis is like there's now is the biggest homeless crisis ever in New York. Did you see that video of like the guy sleeping in the subway where they lifted up the thing? There were like hundreds of rats coming out, but like God forbid there's homeless everywhere, and the fact that you get like homeless Jews sleeping in tunnels in a synagogue is, I guess it's more interesting to people. Is like that.
Well, yeah, it's all catnip for anti-Semites, really. Anti-Semites are looking at this. I remember. I know which clip you're referring to about the homeless person with the rats, Jews coming out of drains. It's all being sort of memed together, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were kind of more sinister hands behind this, because it seems a bit contrived to me.
Yeah, I agree, but I was willing to take it because I just love talking about Jews, and I love Chabad. I've been there many times. And,
well, it's okay for people to have odd hobbies and interests, and to be interested in Jews or whatever, the peculiarities of Jews. But what sort of irritates me is the way that so many people in the so-called dissident right seem to connect it all to the problems of white people, and it's obviously not connected to the problems of white people.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about Jews are just opportunistic and benefit from multiculturalism and demographic change, but Jews are not the cause of multiculturalism and demographic change. We just benefit from it. How
do you benefit from it exactly?
Well, there's multiple ways, but one thing, it allows us a clear path to power in the sense of if you have a white hegemony majority, it's much more difficult for Jews to rise to power as a minority. But in a multicultural area, it's easier for Jews to rise to power. But
in a multicultural society, nobody rises to power. it just becomes either chaos or one group imposes its will on the others, and then you have a tyranny. And obviously, Jews are incapable of imposing a tyranny over a multicultural society because they haven't actually done that anywhere.
Yeah, I would agree. Power is an illusion. Power is the wrong word.
This is what the Dissident Right believes. This Dissident Right literally believes that the Jews have imposed a tyranny over white society. And that their only example of this happening is the present day, and it's not actually true.
Yeah, I don't think Jews aren't.
I mean, if you push them, they'll say, "Oh, what about the Soviet Union?" But the Soviet Union wasn't a Jewish-controlled society. The Jews got persecuted in the Soviet Union. Early on, they were quite prominent in the revolutionary movement, but they were soon sidelined and pushed down.
Well, I mean, the one example of, so to say that Jews are largely given a pass to behave as Jews under the guise of multiculturalism. Like if you look at like the synagogue stuff or a lot of the stuff in London in the US, in the all-white neighborhoods, we get a ton of pushbacks. Like there's zoning code and you can't do anything. And in multicultural areas, there's no real pushback. It's just like, okay, it's just the Jews doing their thing. Who's going to stop them? And I mean, there's multiple reasons why Jews support multiculturalism and immigration, sympathy from the Holocaust. But even if you disagree that Jews, I don't think Jews are causing it. I think
they're not causing it. I mean, they might feel more comfortable in a more diverse society, but that doesn't have any particular relevance because that multicultural diverse society is happening anyway, and it would happen whether there were Jews or whether they didn't exist.
Yeah, that's why I said about globalism. I say like generally Judaism is more probably favorable towards globalism. Jews are probably more adapted toward globalism than other peoples and might stand to benefit it. But the pressures of globalism are natural. I don't even think like there's not even like a cabal of globalists pushing globalism. The pressures of globalism are natural. And
are the Jews actually adept at globalism? Because I think globalism, when you look at it historically, it's a British phenomenon. The British created globalism through naval power and through things like ideas of free trade, which came out of a book by Adam Smith, who wasn't Jewish.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't say the Jews create it, but I said the Jews benefit, and the Jews are.
Well, you said they're more adept at globalism, and I mean, I'm saying that's not obviously the case because there are other groups that are able to deal with globalism and to benefit from it, and Britain's very much a globalist entity.
Obviously, I just said that Jews. I mean, there's the element that Jews are generally bilingual. And there's Jews in most nations. So like along the Silk Road.
Well, globalism is all about speaking English, remember. It's not about speaking Hungarian or, 5 or 6 Central European languages. It's about speaking English. And that just proves that globalism is essentially an Anglo phenomenon.
Well, only in modern times. So in the ancient times where you had Jews all around the Silk Road, and if the Jews had a common language that they say, well, there's Jews who are assimilated.
Well, you had all sorts of people around the Silk Road. I mean, you had a lot of Armenians in the Ottoman Empire. You had all sorts of tribes that specialized in certain trades. So
I agree, but you're saying you're just missing generally consensus, basic understanding that there's a certain benefit that Jews have somewhat of a monolithic culture, and they have a language that you could be involved in international.
My point is that it's very Jewish history is very interesting.
I could go to a non-English speaking country, a place that has different ways. I could team up with the Jews.
Sure. But my point is that no matter how interesting Jewish history might be, it's not particularly relevant or significant, and it seems to get undue attention paid to it, especially on all these Dissident Right live streams.
Well,
and I think that's just a bit pathetic and sad, really, and quite boring after a while.
Well,
I'm
Colin,
agree with you on that.
Okay, right. So while you're here, then, Colin, if I may, I know this is not in my interest to do this, and therefore I'll caveat this and present it as here is an anti-Semitic trope or something here, and let's have a look at this. So I'll just share this on the screen like that. I've got that I found on Twitter. So what would you say to this anti-Semitic claim here that says, why are Jews 1,650% overrepresented in the White House? So of the 474 White House staff members, 155 of them are Jewish. That's roughly 33%. Blah, blah, blah. What about something like that?
It sort of reminds me of some of the memes about the Soviet Union and how the Soviet Union was supposedly completely run by Jews. But when you actually look into it, you'll notice that, when you apply an objective analysis of that, it soon falls apart. And
I'll put that link in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this meme debunked by several people. So I think if you look into it, it doesn't really hold up. It's just highly selective evidence. So people will look at the evidence that supports their thesis and ignore all the evidence that doesn't. So there's a whole kind of subculture of creating these fake memes and then debunking them. So it just requires a lot of analysis and work.
Well, the link's in the chat. If anybody wishes to do a debunking on that and get back to me, that would be good, and we could talk about it on the next 3-hour Jew stream.
The first hour was kind of just boring Doooovid lecturing on Jewish history or Jewish sociology. And then the second hour got more into conspiracies because people weren't really that interested. Just like the history of Chabad, how they got started in Crown Heights, who are the different factions, why are they fighting over the synagogue, why are there homeless people sleeping in the basement of a synagogue, why are they tunneling, then to the conspiracy type misconstruals of immigration and multiculturalism that because I think that's a big fear among Stephen and his audience. They're scared of immigration and multiculturalism, and maybe even just superstition over Jews that economics or politics, like Colin's a smart man, but your average person, these things are more complicated. It's like Luke Ford and the Magic Key. So then rather than read Adam Smith or a bunch of political economic history, the Magic Key of the Jews makes more sense to make understanding of it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Everybody's looking for the magic key. Luke does have a point there, of course.
And just the constant controversy over Doooovid arguing in favor of multiculturalism, immigration, or claiming that multiculturalism and immigration generally goes along with Jewish strategy, to the conspiratorial that Jews are causing multiculturalism and immigration just because Jews are in favor of multiculturalism and immigration, as a general trend.
Well, you can say that, dude. I can't. So,
well, you can't even say that Jews are in favor overall, or maybe you can. I mean, that's not even that controversial that Jews favor multiculturalism and immigration, to say that Jews are causing it, and then the complications of demographic change and how to deal with it.
Well, I did say earlier, I don't think anybody in particular that I'm aware of, correct me if I'm wrong, is causing Pakistanis to be brought into Britain. So, I don't think there's anybody particularly to blame.
And then
for that as a group.
Considering the audience,
well, there is a group to blame, isn't there? It's actually the British people themselves that are kind of creating the conditions that promote that and allow it.
Well, I mean,
it's probably more healthy to blame yourself than other people, but you could also argue that the British really have no power to stop it. There's just overwhelming forces causing it to happen, and they don't have the power to stop it.
Well, they have the power to stop it, but they've decided that stopping it's too much trouble. It would impinge on their lifestyles too much, and why make a big fuss about it? Maybe it'll be okay. They a lot of them think, oh, never mind, it won't affect me too much, or maybe these people will be fine. They'll fit in, and we'll all live happily together. So there's just a lot of short-termism and naivety involved, and also laziness and unwillingness to change their lifestyles. And that actually has completely nothing to do with a bunch of Jews or people living in tunnels or whatever you want to call them.
Well, you made that statement that you might argue that they have the power to stop it, they might not. And I was...
Oh, they definitely have the power to stop it. Anybody has agency. Anybody can decide that this is actually what I'm doing is not particularly good for me and my group, and why don't I, sort of change course? People do have the power, but they're choosing not to use it. Just because somebody doesn't choose to use power doesn't mean they don't have it.
Yeah, but you say that you have the power to try. It doesn't mean you're going to succeed.
Well, I think if enough people decided to do something about it, then things would happen. But obviously, in the long history of multiculturalism in Britain and the equally long history of British ethno-nationalism, they've never been able to build up much of a following. In fact, the only thing they could actually build up a following for was leaving the European Union, and thus ensuring that most of the immigration coming into Britain would be non-European.
Yeah, what a scam that was.
What do you take of my point of what I'm calling the reverse settler colonial project of basically new international globalist forces that are reverse settler colonizing the West?
Sorry, could you rephrase that?
The reverse settler colonials project, where global corporate international forces are settler colonizing the West.
With what do you mean? Who's settler colonializing the West exactly?
Well, there is like critical race theory. Critical race theory is being used to
I was saying that you
tell
have
these people
a new, not necessarily
that they can do this.
A cabal or like a conspiracy, but you have forces of globalism and internationalism, and they're bringing people to the West to colonize it in the new global multicultural order. And there's a whole bunch of...
I don't think anybody's bringing people to the West to colonize it.
That's like a Kalergi plan idea, isn't it?
I mean, it sounds ludicrously paranoid. I mean, obviously, certain corporations are interested in getting cheap and efficient labor, and they're not really too fussy where it comes from. If they can get somebody who's qualified to do a job and who's going to work more efficiently and more cheaply than people in a Western country, then they're going to do so. And the fact that people in Western countries aren't really replacing themselves in terms of demographics, there's always going to be a suction on immigration. So there's always going to be a steady flow of people who are qualified or talented or who are willing to work hard coming into Western countries, unless you create some sort of system that can legitimately oppose it.
Yeah, but why is colonize not the right word? And just basic send a group of settlers and establish.
Well, colonize is a colony is usually a planned operation. It's part of a bigger plan, and I don't think it is part of a bigger plan. It's just companies trying to make money. That's not a plan. That's just a sort of basic commercial impulse.
Yeah, but it's okay if the conspiracy is not. It's not being led by a group of conspirators. It's being led by natural forces, and it's not just on the lower end.
Well, you've got to worry about how you describe things, because the way you describe things can often create misleading associations and connotations. And I think you just got to look at it in a much more basic term. And the correct way to view it is that Western countries, which are highly affluent for all sorts of reasons, have sub-replacement fertility, and therefore they always have a lack of labor and manpower to do certain tasks, and so they're always going to suck in immigrants unless there is a political decision taken at some level to stop it. And in fact, people go on about British governments being very pro-immigration, But the fact is that most British governments are anti-immigration, and they go to considerable trouble to actually limit immigration. But in the face of the demographic slope that they've created through feminism and individualism and low birth rates, the inevitable, effect is that there's going to be a lot more immigration. But they just try to manage it or limit it to some degree.
Well, I was applying the old Zionist slogan to the West, of the reverse settler colonial project that I'm calling it, that a people without a land for land without a people. It's saying the people without a land are wherever the immigrants are coming from, and the land without a people is the West.
Well, it's more like a people without an economy coming to an economy without a people. That would probably be a more astute way to phrase that.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's what led to, so to say, the Zionist settler colonial project. And people don't like the term, but that concept of the people without a land for a land without a people. So the reverse settler colonial project in the West, if you would say, it's a people without an economy for an economy without a people. And that's these greater forces of globalism, and why the immigration keeps on coming, and why you may not be able to stop it. It just look like Palestinians, like, okay, they wanted to stop the Israeli colonial.
Well, basically, Doooovid, you're just engaging in using kind of triggery language. It's going to trigger all the kind of anti-Semites and JQ white Wignats out there, which is usually your audience.
Yeah, man, that's why I'm trying to phrase it in the type terms of the people that watch this stuff they might be familiar with. And I guess people watch this stuff because they like to be triggered.
Yeah, SJJ, what was that comment that just flashed up?
Oh yeah, so Nudge Unit asks, what is the point then, Colin? Should we conclude that it's better to give up, or should people focus on something else and accept it, etc.? What is the objective here?
Well, I think the first objective is to get off the JQ train, because it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't really explain why anything's happening. So, first goal is get off the JQ train and stop using the Jews as a kind of a sorry excuse and a cope for all the shit that's happening in the world. And then once you do that, I think most of these steps are quite logical. People should then move on to kind of more natural, logical conclusions that do they want to have a healthy society, and is demographic replacement part of that healthy society or not?
Cool.
I mean, keep things simple. If they're not simple, they're not true, really.
Well, look, I do tend to agree. I mean, I know that you think that Doooovid is like a bit of a costume Jew, comes on here to trigger the Wignats or something. I think, forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth. I get
no. I completely would, embrace that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, look, many people do. I actually seem to feel differently, and maybe I'm just alone in that Doooovid is with exposure to him. Not the first time, I grant you. The first time you get like the David Yorkshire response, okay, where they say, "Aha! Thank you for confirming all my suspicions, Jew," and they go away and they like put it on their channels and say, "Look, here's a Jew admitting it all, ha ha ha," and rub their hands. Okay, but I think with exposure to some Doooovid, he actually has like a de-radicalizing effect in a way. But maybe I'm the only one who thinks that.
Yeah, most of my content's relatively boring. Relatively, like, I came because you asked me, and you give me a bigger audience. But like the first hour was basically Doooovid giving boring, just history, theology, which is probably my best speed. So I end up playing the character because it's more interesting, and so that's the nature of social media. Brings out the worst in us that give the audience what they want. I mean, maybe Colin's always in character as an intellectual, but Doooovid starts out as an intellectual and then gets dragged down by the crowd to give them what they want.
Yeah, we could have just gone straight to the crowd and given them what they want, to be honest. They were just shouting at us for the first hour.
Anyway, gents, I have to take leave of you now. So
yeah,
nice
thanks
chatting.
for coming on, dude.
Right,
I
cheers.
appreciate it.
Bye bye.